So before we go deep into the dark side of what we're gonna talk today, let's start with a little, little light side, right? As a Sikh person living in diaspora, how do you think, what people perceive us as?
That's a really complex question because it really depends who you're talking about. ਆਪਾਂ ਕਿਹਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, who are we talking about in general? Um, especially if you're talking about North America. Sometimes what happens is a lot of people don't know our identity. A lot of people don't know who we are. And I've been in rooms where I'm like the only guy who's a Sikh or like a brown person. And what happens is a lot of times people are curious. They want to know more, but they're afraid to ask. And there's a lot of like, you could call it like more of like a awareness thing. We still need that, even though like we're the fifth largest religion out there. Um, living in the diaspora, it's a blessing of its own. But at the same time, there are some challenges when it comes to my field in general. So when we talk about, let's say, I'll give you a really good example. When I started J school, when I started journalism school, or even like this is we're talking about Brampton, Toronto here, and these kind of scenarios are happening here. I don't know like how it's gonna be. It's probably worse outside of these cities too. So I started J school back in 2019. When I went into J school, I found out I'm the only Punjabi, I'm the only Sikh in the whole class. And on the graduating day, it was the same thing. I was the only turban dude walking down that stage. And in general, when we talk about the diaspora, it is expanding, but at the same time, when it comes to our representation, there's not enough people talking about what we're missing because of previous stereotypes that are already there. But at the same time, when you talk about living in the diaspora and how people perceive us, that's a total different topic that you talk about because different community perceive us differently. And they have their own internal neutral biases. And if going forward, there's also some other. It really depends if you're talking about specific demographics, because a lot of times what happens is, let's say it's a white person who's trying to talk to me. It's a total different conversation talking to a white person or a brown person or like a black person. Because with the black community, there's a lot of things that we could connect to. Or with the indigenous community, there's a lot of things that we could connect to with them. With a white person, because they have so much privileges, it's hard for them to understand our point of view.
Okay, so you've given the perspective of how people think and perceive you from the lens of, other communities and people, right? But for you, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ
Yeah.
ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਬਾਰੇ as a Sikh identity? Because each individual is different, right?
My perspective is more about learning every day, and well, that's what Sikh teaches us. Sikh literally means learner. But that's what we do as a Sikh. You're always learning. But there are a few things in my childhood too. Like day one, to मैं हैगा ऐदा कि I try to stay तैयार पर तैयार. So it doesn't matter whenever a situation comes up. I'm ready to face that situation. And I perceive myself as a good person. And also, when talking about me and my connection with Sikhi, it goes back to where I was born. I was born in Punjab, Chandigarh. And a big part of that is also me living with my grandparents and my grandparents telling me Sakhis. And that's what has been connecting me to Sikhi a lot and learning more about the history and stay connected by listening to Kirtan, doing part, and things like that.
When you think about your childhood, right? Your connection to your roots. to Punjab, what comes in your mind?
When it comes to like Punjab and looking at what my childhood specifically, I think very first thing is Darbar Sahib, the Golden Temple, because I have a special connection with Darbar Sahib because in childhood, well, like you had like a big craze of watching TV
Mm-hmm.
as a kid, especially living in India. So whenever there was like it still happens like in the afternoon or the evening, there's like live kirtan coming on the TV, and then you're just listening to kirtan or you're just watching TV, and then you see their barsa. So that's like the very first thing. But at the same time, there's also food
Absolutely.
that comes
Oh
to
yeah.
mind.
You can't beat Punjab's
You can't
food.
beat that, right?
You just can't beat.
Yeah, and there's no way that food could come to Canada. The taste could come to Canada, right?
Absolutely.
And there's also specific reasons for that if you want to learn about that.
No, we.
But those were the two things. But at the same time, also my
Mm-hmm.
grandparents, because I've been living here as a kid and I didn't have enough time going back and forth. Like they came to me a few times too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's also one thing because I'm from Chandigarh, India, and going back to my childhood home, I went last year, and it was a surprise how things have changed
Oh
now,
yeah,
and
big
how
time.
it's it's like I grown, but like things have also grown with me. But I realized that when I went back to
Yeah,
India, you
and
know.
I think one like what you said about having your grandparents with you. I think it's a blessing because you know. So I'm from Punjab, right? I'm from Amritsar, Punjab. Like literally, like I was born in Amritsar, and I used to go to Golden Temple like on weekly basis, like every Sunday ho gaya, every bi-weekly every Sunday ho gaya ਅਸੀਂ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ. And then we moved here, with the whole family. My grandmother, she came along over here too. And I think that's the biggest blessing because when you get connected to your roots through your elders, through your grandparents, right? You kind of sense that, okay, this was a real thing back in the days, right? Now we have left that behind. What we see through movies, what we see now, it's completely different than what our grandparents have perceived. They have like looked through it. I remember my dadima, she used to tell me stories like how they used to like drink lassis in like this big of a jar. Like that's Punjab for you.
Yeah,
Like they used to drink like this big lassis, and their like parents used to tell them, okay, you have to be like a little strong and you have to have your diet. And that's the real culture that was there. That's there, and I'm waiting to go back and then have that feeling again. So I don't know how different. I'm completely sure everything's like different, digitalized, and everything. So let's see. I'm waiting how that feeling will comes in.